Hello all my subscribers in Texas and the southern region. This is the Blue Water Outlook, weekly water outlook for April 7th, 2013. I'm John Feldt. Well, there was some welcome rain over most of the region last week as I was expecting. Looks like most of the area received at least a ½ inch of rain, and many areas at yellow as 2 inches of rain, and central and eastern Oklahoma certainly got welcome and water resource recharging rain with as much as 4 inches of rain over a small part of the southeast part of the state, and even a little pocket of near 5 inches right along the Arkansas border. Interesting to see, even though in these widespread rainfall patterns, there was a small area here that received quite a bit less. That was only about a tenth or so of rain, tenth to a quarter inch of rain. So if you're in that area, unfortunately, you were the area that really didn't receive all that much last week. And that shows up on the percent of normal rainfall. Most of the area was above normal rainfall last week. Almost all of Oklahoma, large part of Texas, with the exception of West Texas. Even though West Texas didn't receive any rain from this event, it did start out at least well into the state. It looks like the western extent was out in this region. Everything east of that looks like it received some rain except the far southern tip of the state. And again, this outlier right here in the central, east central part of the state. Now, I wanted to go back in this briefing to look at a couple trends over the winter. I wanted to start off with the 90-day percent of normal precipitation. So this is the long-term picture. And it shows that over a 90-day period, sort of mixed here. Areas of blue are above normal, areas of yellow are below normal. So if we look in Texas, we see quite a bit of everything. A little area of above normal, areas of below normal, and then over the western and southern part, well below normal in red. Now over Oklahoma, again, we see over the central and east, generally a little bit above normal, but definitely over the west, below normal. Now if we go in on the short term, the patterns change. Short term, over the last 30 days, we see most of the state of Oklahoma has had some significant improvement, with most of the state above normal precipitation, while on the other hand, in Texas, with some exceptions, it's been fairly dry. So I think fair to say that Oklahoma has seen some significant improvement in the short term, while Texas in the short term has not really seen as much. Now the drought monitor, if you stand back and look at the long term from November, you can see that on the left and the current on the right. And sort of if you step back without looking at this real long, you can say, well, there's not a whole lot of change. Well, I think some of the changes here would be that Oklahoma has improved modestly, especially the eastern part of the state, and Texas has decreased or gotten a little bit worse as we've gone through the winter months. So there have been some changes, but I think despite getting some short-term rain improvements, the big story is still we need more rain. Now I'm going to talk about that again, sort of dwell on it a little bit in this week's briefing. And this shows the calculated soil moisture anomaly, and it does show that picture of over the south that we do need more rain, anywhere from Kansas southward into Texas. The degree of how much rain we need really varies a bit, but I think it's fair to say overall we definitely have negative anomalies of soil moisture as we exited winter and headed into spring. Now there are a couple ways to look at that. If you read my recent newsletter, I mentioned this, but I'm going to go over it in a little bit more detail here. Short-term drought indicators are based on short-term factors such as 1-month precipitation, 3-month precipitation, upper soil moisture, things like that. This is the short-term drought indicators, and from a short-term perspective, you can see most of Oklahoma is fairly close to normal in the 30 to 70% range. Parts of Texas are also fairly close to normal, and other areas are showing modest dry areas, some pockets of more moderate. But from a short-term drought perspective, you can see that it's leaning towards dry, but not excessively so. However, more importantly are the long-term drought indicators. These are ones that go from 6 to 24-month precipitation, and this still shows that despite that short-term trend, which is masking perhaps the picture, the long-term trend is still extremely dry and in a drought. And until we can really have some improvement on these long-term drought indicators, we're going to still be at risk to fall right back into a drought if rain should begin to taper off. So keep that in mind. Even if there have been some short-term improvements with these very low deficits for long-term, we're very vulnerable to going right back and quicker than normal into more severe drought. So the Arctic Oscillation I mentioned last week, after being in negative territory, it was going to come back up towards neutral. It did, but we had a little bump downward again, and now it's going back up. That bump downward had put some delays in my forecast, but it still is forecast to go up to either neutral or positive over the next couple of weeks, and that's what I'm basing my forecast on, that it will get back up to that type of flow pattern. So this is the jet stream pattern, and this is that transition to a positive Arctic oscillation. Early this week, we're going to have a pulse of energy pulling out of the southwest here. And there'll be two areas or little segments of energy. One will be moving up towards the northeast, one will be going west to east. This one up towards the north will be the stronger one. That's the one where the heaviest precipitation, either rain or snow, will be occurring with. And there will also be one west to east, and that'll be modestly strong as well. Now late this week, as we get into the positive phase, or at least neutral, we'll go from a west to east flow, and that's going to be a quieter flow. So we're going to have this one pulse of energy moving through this week, then the jet stream will lift north and we'll be in a quieter flow pattern. So as far as precipitation forecasts go over the next week, you can see very clearly it's aligned with, this is that northerly pulse of energy, and snow to the north, rain to the south, and another band of energy over the southern U.S., and that looks like it'll once again develop about halfway through the state with the heaviest rain off to the east. This will bring some relief again, a little bit more rain over the eastern sections of Oklahoma and Texas, as well as eastern Kansas, but then dropping off very abruptly further to the west. Now I thought I'd look out a little bit towards the rest of the month of April here. On the top image, that's week 1. The bottom image is week 2. And the patterns we see on week 1 I just described. We see Midwest, which will brush parts of the South, are going to be fairly active. Parts of the South will be active, but not as much so. And then as we go into week 2, that's the bottom image, week 2 showing a very strong signal of dry weather over our region. So right now, I think that's based on the jet stream moving strongly from west to east. It's not going to amplify much, so you're not going to have many strong pulses of energy. And the energy that's embedded in this will be impacting areas to our north. So it looks like week 2, right now, with that positive AO, looks like it's going to be moderate or even above normal temperatures and precipitation below normal. Consequently, when we look at the 2-week soil moisture changes, for most of the South, it looks like negative soil moisture anomalies or drying soils over the area. I think early in the period there could be some increase over eastern Kansas, eastern Oklahoma, eastern Texas with this precipitation. After that, it looks like over a 2-week period, it will average out to be negative because the rest of the period looks very dry. So the takeaway points from this week's briefing: the South will be impacted by that second tier of energy. It'll be developing mainly over eastern parts of the South, and with a developing positive AO, eventually going into that zonal flow or a west to east flow, and that trend looks like it will be a dry trend that will be shifting the precipitation to our north and bringing dry conditions for the rest of late this week into next week. Thank you for listening to this week's briefing. If you have any questions, you can always email me at john@bluewateroutlook.com. If not, I'll be talking to you again next week.